Live now. Oh, awesome.
It's
What
alive.
episode is this again? There.
Oh, we're on number 6. I wrote
Six.
down 7. We're on
Season
number
one
6.
still? Season one?
It'll be fixed in post.
Okay. All right. So episode 6, season 1,
That's it.
and we're gonna be talking about religion tonight. No, we're gonna be sticking to just religion. Or are we going to talk faith? Or are we going to talk like higher powers? I don't know. Where is it going to go? I don't know where it's going to go.
Might go all over the
like
place.
I can tell you what, though. I have feelings. I have thoughts. I could talk a lot on this particular topic. I'm sure everybody could, right? Everybody's got thoughts on religion.
I don't really want to. I'm having trepidation about talking about religion because it brings back a lot of memories.
Yeah, and let me put out a disclaimer from my side at least that I am going to, like, in this conversation, it's not going to be my goal to like throw dirt on any person or any particular person's beliefs. I think I think where I'm at right now is that new information comes in all the time. So you process it, beliefs change as new understanding come into play, and it's not my place to judge where someone is on their journey there. So I expect that we'll talk about, and I'm getting some echo now, but
Well, I'll tell you what, Jordan. I'm going to stop you right there.
yeah,
You may not be throwing people's beliefs and religion and things under the bus, but I definitely am going to. I have no compunctions about them.
I don't plan on doing anything like that. I think
that's not true.
my goal is just to talk about it as a whole and kind of see like how we've grown and sort of like what we know now. I guess
Mm-hmm.
is the most important part of it.
right. Because if I could step back a bit, and the thing that I'm not going to do is throw a person under the bus in this conversation. I can throw beliefs under the bus. I'm fine with that, but but I guess I'm in a place where I'm thinking that people, a lot of people, and I'm not going to say everyone. There certainly are malicious people that use these things and beliefs and people that believe things they say for malicious purposes. But I think that we're all in a journey, and so as we talk about these things, I'm going to be talking from my experience, and I'm willing to be critical of my experiences as much as I can be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the end of the day, I'm not someone who's going to tell. I haven't figured everything out at this point, so I'm not going to tell people what to
Well,
think.
I think here, what do we usually do here on What's the Bit? We usually start off with just the word and trying to like nail down a definition of some sort. But
True.
like, let me survey the room here. Like, is religion like separate from belief and faith? Or is it all kind of tied up to be the same thing? Because I mean, depending upon your definition, you can be talking about a lot of different things. Sometimes it's people just say it's the particular system of faith or worship, but other people like religion and their faith. There is no separation. So what is it for you guys?
I think the religion is what creates the faith. I don't think it's the same thing. I think that's the basis upon which you find your faith. Whatever it is you believe in is based upon those facts.
Ooh,
So I
air
would.
quotes on facts. Just said, note that for the listening audience.
So do we need to come to an agreement on in this conversation then on what we're going to be defining it as we talk about it? Because mine would be a little bit different. Um, I I think religion is kind of that man-made system and rules and kind of structure that gets put into place. Um, I don't know that I would refer to it as any kind of facts. It's more of like you take a book, any book or any idea, and you turn it into a thing that has you have to do this, and you kind of make it a system that people need to follow along.
All right, so we the room's already split, right? So
Right.
we have Alex who says that religion is the thing that gives you your faith, and Jordan, you consider your faith and your religion separate, and like the religion more of the system. And when you say system, are you trying to hint at like control or just organization and structure? Because
I
like
think
I will
it's
go as far as saying that I think that religion is instituted to create control over a congregation, but that's because I kind of have some negative feelings about certain things. But continue.
I mean, yeah, I mean it the way you phrase that sounds malicious, and I think there certainly is that. But then I think there's also people where it is a religion, but their intent isn't malicious, it's organization, and it's labels, and it's kind of this unifying, this is what this is what we're identifying as. Here it is, here's the things. and and now it's like, okay, so if you believe this, now you are now in this religion.
Ooh,
and, and
so
and and they get to the point where it's like you have to believe this on some of them, like, and if you don't, then you're not really in this particular
so
religion.
so for instance, like we're gonna probably pull out like a difference here between like the idea of like like I don't really like religion, but I have faith, or I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. That kind of like that. I think that that's a soundbite or idiom or things that gets kind of
My
stated
issue
quite a lot actually.
is the people that go because their spouse believes in the religion.
Whoa, we're jumping right into the issues based on religion. I love it. So, in other words, I believe that religion has elements of control built into the structure of it. So you're basically saying that, like, whichever one in perhaps a marriage relationship is more religious will then impress upon some sort of need to bring the other person along.
Oh, I think that's the part that I heard from the religion point of view is like you have to believe all of the standpoints in order to like label yourself that and for them to accept you as that as one of them. And it's like there are so many relationships where one party sort of grew up that way and the other party didn't and is just willing to kind of accept them for them and is willing to go along.
Right. So I think we also, when we're getting into the aspect of like you said labels, and I think that that's something that we love here on What's the Bit podcast, right, Jordan?
We
We
love
love
labels.
labels.
We'll have a whole episode on
Yeah,
labels.
yeah. We need to throw that in the list of topics, labels. But yeah,
I mean,
it,
some labels are good. Like, you when you're looking at your medicine and it says take 2 a day, that label has some value to it.
you heard it here first. Jordan likes at least one aspect of labels. Just like that's good. That's good. I love it. Um,
Let's talk. So you also brought up the word faith. So yeah, so it's again, yeah, people will mix faith. Like they'll say faith, they mean their religion, or vice versa. Like for me, faith is the actual practical definition of faith. It's the things that you don't 100% know. You have reason to believe certain things, but you're kind of taking that extra like step to say, I don't know for sure, but I'm going to try it out. It's like the faith, like if you are going up on stage for stand-up comedy for the first time and you don't quite know if you're going to be good, but it kind of takes that step of faith to be like, you know what, I think I'm good, I have reason to believe I'm good, I want to do this, and so I'm going to take that step and just go and do it. I'll stop there for now.
well, I mean, I think that like it's interesting aspect with faith versus religion. Like I like to separate them just in the aspect of like I think that religion is like a system that you are indoctrinated into or that you seek to become a part of. Where I think faith, for me personally, is more of an activity, something that I think that requires renewal, action, active. active belief, right? That because like I think that when we talk about faith, or at least the way that I was taught to think about faith, and let's be honest here, like I look at religion through the lens of Protestant Christianity. I was brought up Lutheran, so like the way that I relate with religion is, through those terms and through that particular system. And there's this idea of taking a leap of faith. And I enjoy the aspect of taking a leap of faith and the fact that it involves free will and an active decision on my part. What I dislike and what I typically associate with religion is an aspect of like where people say I know instead of I think or I believe, and they say it's this way, and they treat things as if they are facts, and
That's the
they
black and
impress
white,
upon you.
right?
Yes, and I highly dislike that.
The absolutes.
And like when I talk
It's-
to my daughter about religion, I say like when you go to church, because I don't take her to church, but she goes to church with her mother, and I say like it's all cool.
Which church? Which type of?
She goes to
denomination?
like a non-denominational Protestant church here in Madison, and like I tell her, I'm like, participate and take whatever you can from it, but like be wary of the people who say I know. Listen to the people who say I believe or I think or I have faith about this, because those are opinions and those are things that you can interact with.
I would say be careful of the people who tell you not to question it. Those are the people that I would say to stay away from.
100%.
I grew up around a lot of Baptists, a lot of Methodists. My mother was Jewish, my father was Italian, and I hid my faith because I, one, was persecuted for even being born a certain way, and two, wasn't even sure if I believed the things that they were saying. So it's like I didn't fit into either group, and everyone wants to label me, little Jew boy, essentially, growing up. Oh yeah, I can say that.
Of course.
And like even having like a Porsche was one of my first cars, but it was like an automatic car that cost like less than $3,000. But look at that Jew and his Porsche, and it's like that's unfair because I have this vehicle and I was born a certain way. So that's why I have such an issue discussing religion at all.
Just because you feel like you were automatically like separated.
It took me like 6 months before I even told you guys that. Like, this is still something that I don't openly enjoy discussing because I feel like as soon as you say it, people go, "Oh, well, that means he's cheap."
I mean, I knew you didn't have to tell me. I pegged you. I pegged you for a Jew.
Yep. Thanks. Thank you.
But see that like to me, this is where maybe I don't know that I can maybe give a hat tip. There's a lot of my childhood that I question, but I know that I never grew up thinking that people were different, like no matter what religion they were or race. Like it never occurred to me, even to this day, that there is some sort of reason that we should be separated because of those things. Never. And I don't know if my parents did that. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, I guess my mom did say that a black girl asked me to prom and she wouldn't let me go, and she said something. I won't badmouth my mom today, but that's besides the point. My point is I never thought that.
Let's just let that dead spot just sit where we just silently judge Jordan's mom for just like forever. No.
We'll talk about mommy problems and
yeah, we could do
that. Sounds like a really fun.
We could do an entire season just called Mom.
That should be our season finale, actually.
Yeah. But so when I think about religion as well, I want to bring this up for you guys as well. Had you not been indoctrinated into some sort of religion, or you hadn't been put in a situation where you felt separated because of religion, do you think that there are things about your life uh, where you feel that you would have had more choices available to you? Like, it was like I personally feel that because I was brought up Wisconsin evangelical Lutheran, that there were certain things I needed to be. Like, there was certain elements that were just put in place or put in control about what I was supposed to do, how I'm supposed to behave, how I'm supposed to act in order to like maintain my space in the club, how I can like go to church and appear as part of the congregation and seem to fit in. But what would our lives look like had we not had those controls, or what, or are we even aware of them?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I probably would have fit in, or felt like I fit into a group, instead of trying so hard to find which group that actually resonated with me. And I never really found that in just one. There was never just one religion or youth group or any sort of foundation where I go, oh, all of this is true. That never set in for me. It was always like, no, this one doesn't sound right here. Did you guys see this one and this one? Like, no, just me. And then just the fact that people so blindly are like, no, there's a reason. Hold on. Just hold on. One second. It's because, and then they give you some, read scripture that makes no sense to me. And then you decode it for me to tell me how it fits your dialogue.
Yeah. So like the aspect of like using religion as its own proof, right? It's pretty strong with Christianity. Like, we have this Bible, and we have taken a leap of faith with this Bible that we believe it is true, and through that leap of faith, then we don't really have to like do anything else. We can just say that it's self-evident and then recycle it on its own purpose. But like, that doesn't work. That's not how you relate to another person, as far as like, I don't know, evangelizing to them, if you must. Like, I was taught that we were supposed to evangelize, supposed to bring the good word to another person. But like, if you are preaching from a book that someone doesn't even believe in, how is that ever effective? Like, I mean, unless we have some sort of middle ground through which to interact with someone, how do you expand your faith to them? And is it even worth doing?
I mean, I think if we could pause for a second before we get into that, I think there's that, like, the Bible or whatever holy book a certain religion might hold dear, but we'll take the Bible because that's our background, and it's one of the prevailing ones out there. If I could take a step back and say, like, that is where things get skewed, right? That's where the problem kind of starts. And again, I don't think it's always malicious. It comes from this thought of, right now they believe that book is 100% true. Whether maybe they were taught that, there is certainly reasons to believe it's special. There is, but it's how people understand it is everything. How they view it, how they think, what they think it's supposed to be used for. And when you say something like, someone doesn't believe in that in the Bible, I don't know that that's even like believe in the Bible. What does that mean? I mean, it exists. It's words written by people. It's not a book. That's where the part of the folly is that it's not a book. It's a library of books. It's a collection of writings that people had over the years and discovered over the years that got put into one binder. but it's a bunch of different people talking. It's a bunch of people, different perspectives to a bunch of different people. So it's a library. It's not a book. And people view it as a book. They think, oh, every word is true and taken a certain. So they might believe that. They might fully believe that. And I think that is misplaced. But then, like to your point, then that is the seed that leads to a bunch. When all of a sudden you think every word in that book is 100% true, and there's no folly in it, and it's supposed to be read literally, and now taught literally. And when people have questions about it, you just go back to it and then find an answer in there.
Sure.
That's where we get all off course, right?
Right. You brought up the term literally, and boy, do I have a lot. I have a lot of feelings and thoughts about that particular term, because for a long time, I tried to talk myself into saying, like, I believe the Bible is literal truth, and even while I was stating that, I knew that well, I mean, I didn't know, but like I had this inkling that maybe I didn't truly believe that. Like, and I used to say things like, well, if you take one verse out of context, then, you can really twist the meaning of it to be whatever the hell you want. But like, if you look at the whole book or the whole like library books, as you will say there, Jordan, it's really hard to mix it up. And, I really wanted desperately to have a sense of right and wrong and good and bad, and like have those absolutes in place, because I just wanted to make my life a lot easier in that regard. But like, that didn't work for me. And it didn't work for me for the longest time. And it wasn't until I needed to break down and face the fact that like I didn't really believe that the Bible was literal truth for me. That it was figurative. And like the thing that really got, to me on this particular thing, and the thing that broke me from religion and broke my sense of being controlled by the denomination that I was in, and like the congregation that I was beholden to, was this aspect of my belief in free will. Like, I believe that we have free will, and I believe that it's important, and at no point in time did I believe that any of the prophets or the writers of the books that go into that book, I don't believe they were ever relieved of their free will. So like, while it's getting into theology here, this idea that like the Bible was God breathed, like, sure, it might have been inspired by a deity, but like, that was still being written by the people of that time, and it was through their filter. So just as I'm speaking about like, God and religion through the filter of like a white guy from Wisconsin in, the year 2021, like that's going to flavor the stuff that's going to come out. But like, what was written by only men, chauvinist. Yeah. Like, I mean, like we can run down the list of who they were, and we can look at how it flavored the context of where they wrote from.
Sure, but I want to pause and go back to the free will thing. You can't just gloss over that, throw that out there, and then come back to what we're talking about, trying to get that in there and keep going. So I want to talk about the free will thing for a second. Right. I don't believe that's not my belief. I don't believe that we're I believe to some extent, sure, you make your own choices, but I still think the path still leads to the same place in your journey. And I think there are certain people who kind of prove me that thought process correct for me, where things just play out a certain way, and you didn't have control of that situation. And in fact, accepting that you don't have that control is some sort of faith for some people.
Well, can you expand?
It's a faith because that's what you believe. That's what you hold on to. That's the thing that gets you up in the morning.
Well, I mean, so I think there's still then definitions on what we want to say by free will, because it sounds like you kind of do believe in free will, yet you have this additional belief that, but because if people can make their own choices, then their paths are going to go all different directions, and that's kind of free will, and then, but if they all go to the same place, you're just kind of saying that they all kind of end up where they need to be. And so then does that really mean that they had free will if they never got to a different destination?
Well,
And that's assuming that you do get to the same destination, which again has to deal with a belief system.
Yeah.
I would say that yes, I believe in free will, but I also believe that like the number of choices that we have to make does have some limitation. Like I would say that the closest thing that can like nail down my belief in a nice bite-sized form is like I believe in like the Tao of Forrest Gump, and the aspect of like that closing bit where he says, it's like I don't know if we have destiny or if we're floating around all day accidental, like, but I think maybe it's both. Like, I think that we are a product of all of the choices that were made before us by all of our foremothers and forefathers. Everybody that came before us, their choices limit our potential.
I'm sorry, I never met my
potential.
forefathers.
Well, right.
Sorry, personal joke.
But like, and on future episodes, abandonment will be also coming up. But like we have a certain amount of like power to our choices, like with like a capability to carry things out, and we can increase that or decrease that with our choices. But I do think that we get choices amongst a range of options. So I do think that we have limited options to us, but we have kind of there's still kind of a lot of capability.
Yeah, because the person who doesn't believe in free will would say, because we clearly have choices. I mean, I can choose what I'm about to say right now. I could say fart. I just chose it, but the person that didn't, that doesn't believe in free will, would probably say that I had no choice but to say that word. Like that was directed. It wasn't me making that choice. There was no other word that I could say other than fart.
Right. And Tyson's also like tried to prove this at times with deja vu, where like when you feel like you've been in a situation before and you remember the text or you remember the thing you said and you're consciously like, do I say what it is that I know I'm going to say, or do I throw a wrench in there just to kind of prove to myself, I guess, that I have that free will? Am I right or wrong about this statement?
You're right. Like definitely when I'm experiencing deja vu, there is this moment where like, oh, I'm going to finish the sentence this way. And then I do. And then I'm like, and then I'll always have like some people in my life who will tell them like, I just had this moment again where I dreamt about this little, months ago or whatever. But like, I also have kind of weird beliefs about like what causes deja vu. And like, I think there's a couple of different ways to think about this. And I think that you and we've discussed about this, but I think it's worth kind of jumping into. Like, what do you think deja vu is there, Alex?
I mean, deja vu for me is sometimes in my dreams. Like it's something that I've seen and I couldn't explain later. And then until that moment started, and then I'm like, I remember this, but like at the time I had no idea.
Dude, I have totally experienced real life moments where I know for a fact I dreamt about it. And I 100%, I dreamt about this. I know it clear as day.
So what is that? What is that? If not,
no,
but it's already been determined. It's already happened.
So like this is the instance that where your kernel of knowledge or the data, that point that's coming in that informs your belief in the aspect of like, we've already lived it. Everything's happened. We're just carrying down the path, but it's
reliving the movie.
We're reliving the movie where I am of a different viewpoint on it. I'm of the viewpoint of, which it sounds probably fucking insane, but like,
of course,
I have this idea that like, we send those things back in time to create questions, because I think that having questions and skepticism about what is the nature of our existence is good for us. I think it's one of the reasons why it's always mundane topics. It's never something like, how often do you have deja vu about something that is really, really fucking important? It's always something mundane. And I think that like we send back these like little hints about, hey, maybe we should ask some questions about this. What is it? Like,
Brianne's spot on. It's the Matrix. That's how you know. Like you send you see a cat twice, and then that's how you know it's the Matrix.
Yeah, they're changing things. The Smiths are coming.
Mr.
The Smiths are coming. That does that mean there's a
Andersons.
band orgasming? Or no, the Andersons. That's okay. I don't know. That wasn't a good.
Well, no.
That was terrible. Let's move on. We should cut that out and post.
What? So yeah.
I will say that like so deja vu. I know exactly what deja vu is. It's a strip club in Minneapolis, and the first time I went there, I totally said I definitely dreamt about this before.
I definitely dreamt about like getting a credit card statement and like having my ex-wife like yell at me about it, be like, why is this? Why did you spend $300 at that strip club? I can't even tell. I don't know why. That was a bad night.
So how would you define spirituality?
Ooh. Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
What is that, like the church in your mind? That's since you don't need an actual physical place. It's just my spirituality is that everything happens for a reason. And
that's spirituality, or is that your faith?
I don't know.
Or is it all one thing for you, Alex? Is it all? I feel like everything for you is like one thing. It's like religion, faith, spirituality. It's all one thing. We've all lived it before. Everything is meaningless. So
none of it matters.
Teacher, nothing matters. It's like, I mean, I'm just going to start quoting Ecclesiastes and making it sound like it's mine. But I honestly, I think that spirituality and religion and faith are all different. Like spirituality to me is like our sense of our interacting with our spirit. But that's a question. Do we have a spirit? Do we have a soul?
Well, I think
soul and a spirit different.
I think when someone says I'm spiritual, the very first thing that means is that they're acknowledging that there is something else. I guess that's how I would think of it. It's
magic.
There's whatever it is. Right? They're just saying they're probably saying I'm not sure, but I feel like there's more than just this physical material of me. There's something else that is a part of all this.
So that's it. It's the greater being. There's something bigger than you. That's what spirituality is. It's something that you're not the greatest being in control, apparently.
Could possibly. I mean, like for me, I mean, like I guess what I get down to when it comes to like spirituality and that sort of thing is that if I have to nail it down, I believe in the church of I don't know. Like I choose to believe in some things. I choose to interact with my sense of faith through a certain vernacular, but I really don't know. And when I think about like I'm in my quiet moments and I'm in my mind and I'm like, I feel like I'm staring into the void of life, and I'm just like, does any of this fucking matter? And I'm getting into like existential wayfaring where it's not really a crisis, but I just don't know like what's the fucking point. I get down to these questions of what is the evidence of something more, and I know that there are these moments where I feel like I am connected to people, where I can like either read them from a distance or I have feelings that I can't explain. It's like I'm getting data that doesn't have a source, and I interact with it, and it, I follow my gut or my intuition or whatever you want to call it. But there's some value to it. I mean, like Alex, you know that we've had moments where it's just like, boom, and like
you constantly can pull out thoughts in my head and say them before I can, and it would alarm me more if that wasn't one of my like hidden skills. And so like when I see someone like that and they do that to me, I immediately kind of latch on to that, and I'm like, I'm on to you.
Mhm.
Like my guides don't let that slip, and I think that's part of my spirituality that I don't really talk about. Is I feel like our guides talk to other people, and it's those people that are open to it are the people that kind of benefit from it, and the people that run from it kind of have something to hide.
Well,
Yeah.
and then I think this is what ties in. This is how faith is connected as well, because I have plenty of knowledge of like facts, scientific facts that lead me to believe that there is probably something more. And we don't have to go into to that in this podcast. We could say that for another time. But I have reasons. So it's not like I just hope that there's something else. I have things that go, okay, well, it kind of makes sense, and it leads me to believe that there probably is, but I don't know for sure. So like that's where all of a sudden this idea of faith comes into play. So like faith is like this choice where it's like, okay, I don't have all the data, but if I'm looking at there is more than this, or this is all there is, and it's pointless, or you know, and maybe there's more than two. I don't want to limit it, like, but like the choices in front of you, it'll take a leap of faith. A leap is probably a poor choice of words that got put in, but faith. It'll take some faith, however big of a leap that is, some sort of a step where it's like I don't have all the data, but I have enough to make me make a decision that I guess right now I feel like this is probably it.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I think to that point is the really interesting detail. So I think that I've probably even said it before on this podcast, but this idea that we don't know what it's called, but we're trying to get our hands around something. It's like it's the elephant in it's the elephant and the three blind men are touching it. Like, you know, like, and we're all touching a different part and we're all describing it differently. You know, like one person's touching the trunk and then like, oh, the elephant's like a snake. And then some person's touching the tail. It's like the elephant's like a rope. Another person's touching the leg. The elephant's like a tree.
That part bothers me so much. It's the same thing, but we're calling it different things, and it's
Exactly. But at the same time, we all can't interact. We can't see the whole goddamn elephant.
sure. But you could be a little more broad about it and accept that there's something there. But
Oh,
instead,
I
you want
agree.
to fight about the name.
I agree. And like,
Right.
I'm tiring of fighting about the name, and
Yeah.
I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to get caught up, and that's the part. Like, that's where religion and faith and spirituality splits for me, because it seems to me that religion is caught up in blind man number one saying it's a snake and it's only a fucking snake, and like
And I'm gonna
that
fight
guy
you
over
over it. Yeah.
and that guy over there who's like saying it's a trunk or it's a tree is like, that guy's he needs to go to hell. Like that sort of fucking shit. Like I've had enough of it. But like, I think there's also, like, we have some conjecture. Like, you know, the elephant, it might not be magic or spirituality at all. It might be science. We might have magnificent brains that are like calculating data and picking up wavelengths that we don't even have gauges for.
At the same point, that's all the same. Then I mean, it's whatever we're calling it. If it ends up
Right.
being science, then
Yep.
science is the thing. It's this
Right.
thing that is over us.
Mhm.
You know, but I think the problem with science would be that that's not like science. Science is just like the definition of science isn't that. The definition of science would be observing things over and over to come to a conclusion on what, like, so
Right.
it's not like science can't be this overwhelming. It's an act. It's a
Right. It's an act, and it's empirical data, and
The intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure. So
exactly.
nothing about that is emotional or spiritual.
Right. And
Right.
what does that depend on? It depends on being able to see the element of the data. Like, I think that maybe that it's possible that, like, you know, it wasn't all that long ago when we started having really good microscopes and really good telescopes to be able to see beyond what our current existence is and being able to, like, define things. It might, like, maybe there's, in the far-flung future, some sort of spectrometer that reads the omega brainwave that actually tells us how we connect to one another. And like that night when, like, Alex and I had that moment where, like, I got to the topics before you got there, but then you also started You turned it around on me, and you was like, I feel like there was something with your mother, and I was like, you should chase that. And you're like, I don't know how I feel about talking about this, but like, I mean, there was a narrative there, and you were nailing it, and I knew you were. And like, when I felt you doing that, I was like, I need to be calm, and I did something really hippie. I was like, I'm just going to open up and I'm going to try and let him read my energy. And I was like, God, I feel like such a douche. But like,
well,
and that's
and then I did it and it worked.
And again, at some point in life, we might be able to use science to explain how that worked. But explaining how it worked doesn't mean that there is no existence of something else. Like because that's where I end up, when we get into science things, like that's where I end up saying, at some point the question is, okay, but who made this all observable? Like, how did this become, like, what other thing out there made it so that that this stuff even works, where we can figure it out? Like, how, like, there's something else beyond just that. And that's at least a piece of what makes me continue to have this little bit of faith that, that's kind of the direction I lean, is that there's something beyond that. It's not, science isn't in and of itself anything greater than what it is. It is what it is. And we might keep, so like whenever, like, and this is where I think religion gets off, is because they might make this dogmatic claim, and then they use God of the gaps kind of a thing. Well, we can't explain it, so we call it God, and then science explains it, and then science folks, or maybe like non-spiritual science folks or whatever, would say, well, see, that just continues to prove that God doesn't exist, or the spiritual being doesn't exist, whatever it is. Where really that's not, to me, that doesn't line up. It's like, well, no, we just explained it, but still there's this other layer of, okay, but still, why does that work that way? Like, who put the rules into place?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jordan. And I think that is a pretty natural thing for people to want to answer. I think ultimately, when we get down to like topics of religion or science or faith or that sort of thing, that it comes back to like some very basic animal instincts. I think that we as humans fear the unknown. And that when we don't have a good answer for something, we're going to look for an answer. And if we can't find one, we're going to make one up.
So does it matter if it's not the right one, as long as it?
Well, I think that's an element of honesty in the ability to stop and say, it's all right that we don't know.
Right.
And that we can feel afraid about what our existence is. Like when our heart beats its last beat and we shut our eyes, or maybe they just glaze over and we drool a bit and then fucking die. But whatever the fuck happens, like, do I have a spirit? Does that soul move along to something else? Do I have an existence? Am I going to haunt someone? Does my thought patterns turn into a ghost? What the fuck is it? Like, do we have to answer it? And I think that a lot of the times, like, as we get closer to death, or even like when we're like alone at night and we're afraid, we start looking for an answer, and we have to answer it. But I think realistically, the answer is we don't fucking know. No one does.
Yeah. And I think that going back to where I think we were going to start going on this topic, but I'm glad, I was open for this going wherever it went, but just kind of thinking of maybe negative things that religion did in our lives, that I've changed my views on, would be this point right here. It would be one big one, would be that this idea that you can know, like what you were saying, Tyson, like just being okay with saying, I don't know, embracing the mystery of, look, this is what I think right now. This is what, I don't think it's a bad thing to try to learn and know, but the moment we feel so much pressure to say, I know, and we get that from the pulpits, like, this is what we are standing firm on this, and it causes division, when really it's probably more like, okay, well, this is what we think this means. This is what we're choosing to believe it is right now until, something changes our mind. But yeah, I mean, like, you don't like, and so that caused so much. I think that caused a lot of unperceived strife for me, but like more like collateral damage of people and relationships in my life, because I just kept on thinking I was right. I had the answer, and no one was going to change my mind on these particular things.
I mean, I'll tell you this, like, the system of rules that were provided to me to answer the question of where I would go when I would die made me try to stick to the rules. Because, like, if you were told, do XYZ, and you get to spend eternity with your loved ones, and if you don't, you go to the other place. And I know that there were certain things that I said and did that were based off of, like, prejudice, systems of control, things, fear of people who were not like the people in my congregation. That wasn't part of who I was. That was put into me because I heard from my mother. She's like, God can take me at any time, Tyson. I know where I'm going. I know where I'm going. I'm going to heaven. That's where my reward is. And she had that faith. And, like, that's my earliest memory from my mother, is her saying, he can take me at any time. I'm like, oh, okay. This is the
guilt. It's guilt. It's fear and guilt. That's all that is be good, or else, but it's interesting that you're being good to go somewhere in the afterlife, whereas, like, my thought process is be good for the life, so that you're a good person morally while you're living. And I don't even think I've processed giving a shit about the afterlife of me being good during the life. So it's really interesting in my brain right now, kind of like putting myself in that position to think, like, everything you're doing is for a time when it actually doesn't matter to you. Like,
well, yeah.
Logically.
Well, I mean, it's kind of the interesting aspect of, like, when you get raised by someone who doesn't ever admit that they have depression, and they're like, oh, well, they're just really looking forward to the end. And then certain things gets normalized, and then you get indoctrinated. And then what do you do? What do you do when, like, someone sets you up with the aspect of, like, it all matters about the end, what you're doing, like, and I can't tell you how upset I get when I hear, like, I'm praying for you. I'm like, oh, you're praying for me because you want to change. You go into a room and wish aloud that I was different because you're afraid I'm not going to end up in the same place where you're at after we're all dead, when we don't even know what the fuck this is.
Right. Well, and there, it's like, it's like that's why I had to go through deconstruction, through this deconstruction community, like, and because a big part of it is more like a support community. It's not necessarily like deconstructing you. It's more like, how do you deal with these emotions? Because part of the things you have to realize is that, like, the anger, what to do with the anger of that person that indoctrinated you, but they're just doing it because they got indoctrinated. Like, they truly believe this. Like, Penn Jillette said that like, how horrible of a person would you have to be to believe that hell exists and then not go try to save people from it?
Exactly.
So in their mind, they love you to death, and they want to save you from what they believe exists. And as misplaced as that might be, you have to have a little bit of grace for them, because they just believe it and they don't want you to go to the other place. They want you to be in.
You don't have to have grace for them.
Well, I think you have to understand where it's maybe coming from, because
I trust me, I understand where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I've read the book, The Library of Books, a couple times. And when it comes to those conversations, like, there is a pretty strong undercurrent. in the way that the Bible's written about like, you know, making a choice, or like, I suppose like if you're part of the born again crowd, you know, like taking Jesus Christ as your personal savior, and like there's a decision. Uh, the this idea that you have to allow the other person their dignity of risk, and when you are browbeating them, that's not really, when you guilt trip someone into saying they believe, they're not making the choice for the right reasons. Like it's one thing to say you love God, and it's quite another thing to like be afraid of hell, and to say you believe because you have fire insurance. Like like if you're if you're really being an evangelist of kind of what I was taught, the focus should be on the good news and the why you should make the good choice or whatever the fuck, instead of the, hey, I don't want you to fucking end up in hell because I want you to be with me. It's like, well, like you're not even giving me, like, show me the reason why I want to spend more time with you. Because right now I don't even want to fucking spend any time with you, because all I ever hear is like shit about this stuff. Like, I mean, do I want to go to heaven and like hear more about like how you don't like fucking liberals? I mean, Jesus.
Can I get on my
it as it is?
Can I get on my high horse for a second? Can I get on my colt?
Please.
my colt, not colt. So here's a place where I'm at right now where I haven't read the Bible in a while. I've kind of taken a break, but I am planning on going back, and
like Ross and Rachel.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But like the perspective now that I've come to understand some things, because I think when you look at the things in the Bible that are Jesus's teachings,
sure,
those are dramatically different than other things in the Bible. And as significant as a person as he is, I think, especially, I mean, like, you know, when Gandhi says, "I love your Jesus, I just hate Christians," you know,
yeah.
like that is a paraphrase,
Yeah.
but like that's the bit, right? It's that, you know, the people that claim to be Jesus followers, but now they've turned it into a religion, and so now they're these people that are hateful and hurtful and divisive, and they're not even doing what the person that they claim to be following taught. And and so I've come to understand that actually, like, rather than what some people do, that you read the Bible as this one book, and you kind of read it, and everything you can bring anything out of it. Like, rather than doing that, everything you read, use a lens put a lens of Jesus's teachings on it. So instead of like when you read one part of the Bible, if that's not what Jesus said, then it's like you have to put a different lens on. And so I'm going to have a more Jesus-centric view when I read it next time. The other thing, we're talking about hell, I just have to get this out there because this would be one of the things that I've been deconstructing, and had I had a different view of this early on, it would have been completely different for me and my friends, and what I thought I was trying to save them from, and how they probably took it, and all that. But it's just very interesting to have come to find out that, like, you know, very early after Jesus died, and churches actually, from like when the first churches kind of started forming, what they would call the first church, like the idea of a eternal torment, hell, wasn't really the dominating viewpoint. That wasn't what it was. That came along, I think, more along like the Luther time frame and things like that. Like later down the road is when all of a sudden they're like, okay, this is the view of hell that we're going to have. And it's just so interesting that right off the heels of the person that they say they're following, that was not the understanding they had. And now we come to think like we have this whole religion that thinks that eternal conscious torment is that's the view of hell that we are going with, and you better go save people from that. And I didn't, I mean, I it was one of those things that I questioned. I certainly questioned it, but for whatever reason, the indoctrination or whatever, I just kind of thought, oh, I'm sure, I'm saved from it. So I guess I don't have to question it too much. I just got to go save people from it. But then when more information comes in and you start realizing, actually, that sounds kind of horrible. Like, why? It doesn't make sense anymore. And I told my wife this the other day, that, one of the things, because she's not going through this deconstruction with me, that's kind of we have to figure some things out. But I told her one of the things, she's trying to understand what I'm doing. And I said, one of the things I'm doing is I'm allowing myself to let things make sense. If it doesn't make sense, I'm going to allow myself to question it. And I'm going to allow myself to believe things that make more sense. And it doesn't make sense to me that the idea of eternal conscious torment anymore. That just doesn't make sense. But man, like, that's where when I say have grace, I don't know. Every person's relationship with other people that they've been involved with is different. So I can't tell you, but I can tell you that I hope people in my life, like I certainly thought I was doing the right thing. I certainly did love them, and I didn't, but there was a big chunk of my life where that was how I understood it. And I just,
it sounds like though you used it and for good though. Like, I know, like, maybe the thought process behind it now when you deconstruct it comes from like a control point of view, maybe. But it sounds like you used it as you thought you could, whether or not the outcome is still true. You're still trying to help other people at the end of the day, in your mind, as far as the perception goes.
Right. But I didn't even think about what it felt like
from the other end.
Yeah.
To be told that because of the way you were born, you're going to hell. Yeah, right. It's a great feeling.
Because that's a part of it. That, like, part of saving people was people have to recognize that they're a sinner, and that
whatever that means.
Right. And so you first have to get them to admit that they're bad, which is ridiculous. I mean, there's such a caveat there, because we all do bad things. I mean, I think we'd all agree that we do some things that are not.
Well, I mean, like right there, you're jumping into the definition of like sin right there.
Mm-hmm,
like,
there
I mean, like depending upon the definition, like, I mean, wasn't like the original definition like an archery term, and it wasn't that you were bad. It's just that you didn't hit the bullseye. So
you didn't hit the mark.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So you weren't perfect. It had nothing to do with like actually like actively enacting wrongdoing or being wrong.
Or making a value, worth and value, like that.
Mm-hmm. And then, like, let's also bring up this. Like, you talked very seriously about, like, you like what Christ has to say. I'm a fan of Christ. I like Christ too. I think that there's a really interesting detail that is very important in the aspect of there's not a book of Jesus. He didn't sit down and write his own gospel. The gospel was written by his disciples. And they didn't all agree. You read those gospels and you compare them, they're not all the same. Mm-hmm. They conflict. So the fact, like, it's implicit right there. Like, if that's the linchpin of the faith, of the religion, and the account of what happened isn't 100% the same, and there wasn't just like he didn't just sit down and say, I'm going to write it out so everybody knows what it's supposed to be. I think we're supposed to question it. I think that's the point. I think that's the bit of faith, is that we're supposed to question it. Yeah. And the thing that I don't like about religion is because it's giving you answers instead of providing you questions.
100%. Yes. That is the bit. Everything can be questioned. Everything should be questioned. Nothing is off limits. And as soon as someone says you can't be questioned,
Fuck them.
Like, don't even question what I'm saying right now.
Yeah,
because
don't even question it when you tell them you can't question it.
that's the rule. There's one rule.
The bit for me is a little more tangible. For religion, I want to call it Skittles because all of the colors are different, but at the end of the day, it's all still sugar.
It's all sugar. So it rots your teeth and
It's
makes
the
you
same
fat.
sugar
Got
underneath
it.
all those colors. So I wanted to make it a little more tangible for me.
All right.
I agree. It's about
There's so
questioning.
much more to this. But this was good for now.
That's good. Great show, guys. We'll see you next week.